Hi guys, welcome back to Simple and Healthy Mama. If you're new here, thanks for trying out my channel. For everybody who's watching, please go ahead and hit like right there down below. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't subscribed yet already, I would love it if you would consider doing that. Tonight I'm going to try and make dinner. It is 5 minutes till 4. We need to leave at about 4:15 to get to martial arts. So I'm gonna try and prep a dinner in that amount of time. I closed the doors so that the noise wouldn't come in, so now my dog's on the other side of the door barking. I think I'll go open that door. And my kids might come through, my husband might come through, because this is actual real life. But I wanted to do a quick carrot soup recipe. We have all of these carrots from the school food boxes I've been picking up, and I just thought it would be fun to make a carrot soup. I got an immersion blender finally, and I'm kind of loving that for pureed soup. I'm coming, 1 minute, dear. So I'm gonna make a super quick carrot soup and whole wheat beer bread, and I think you're gonna love it. So you are literally propped up on my phone on my stove. I'll show you, it looks like this, because I had no power on my phone, and luckily my stove has for goodness sakes, my stove has a outlet. So just to be honest with you, when I cook, I hardly ever measure. It's why I am a terrible baker, apparently, but it makes cooking really fun because your cooking always tastes different. So what I did today is I thought, I have all these carrots. I want to make a carrot soup. I wonder if there's something I can make with ingredients that I already have on hand, because of course we haven't gotten groceries. So I just typed into Google, like, easy vegan carrot soup, because I wanted something plant-based. I didn't want to add a bunch of cream because then it's delicious but not healthy. So the internet is telling me that a can of full-fat coconut milk would make it really creamy. I might go with light because it does get really fatty for those of us that don't need all the extra calories if you add the full fat coconut milk. But I'm gonna do coconut milk and carrots. I looked at 4 different recipes. I'm just gonna combine some things that I saw in those recipes and kind of make up my own recipe. And if it turns out to be delicious, then I'll post it below in the description. So ingredients that the internet seemed to think go in carrot soup are a pound of carrots. I think I'm actually gonna do 3 pounds. I think I have a big enough pot. I better start with 2 pounds. An onion, which I think I have up here. I do. It said large onions, but I have small. So I'm gonna do 4 smallish onions. And all good recipes start with chopped onions and garlic sauteing in the pan. So I'm gonna start with that. I'm just gonna throw these in. I cheat on garlic. I try not to use garlic powder too much, but I use fresh garlic, but not really that fresh because it's in this giant thing. But oh my gosh, what a time saver. And I don't measure, I just throw it in. And then I'm gonna start with 2 pounds of carrots and then add, what did it say? Like 2 cups of veggie stock? So it'd be 4 cups of veggie stock. I'm basically gonna see how full my pan is at that point and go from there. Okay, so here's me adding the garlic. This is how I measure. I like garlic, so I'm like, a giant, I'm gonna run out of garlic. A giant vat of garlic, yes, that's the right amount. And then it seems like you always need a little olive oil, so I'm just gonna do a few circles around the pan. I'm gonna chop up my onions. So I just loosely chopped my onions like so. I'm gonna throw those in. Okay, there's an airplane going over and now my eyes are watering. I chopped up 4 small onions, and then I remembered that some of the recipes said to do a half of a large onion, so I'm feeling like perhaps I put way too much onion in. And onion is in so many recipes. I'm gonna pull out about an onion's worth. So how's that for measuring? So that it's closer to maybe 2 large onions. I don't want to ruin the soup by making it too oniony. All right, so I'm sauteing just the swirl of olive oil with the ton of garlic and a bunch of onions, probably for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to toss in my 2 pounds of carrots, and I thought I had veggie broth because I thought I was gonna make vegan soup, but I have chicken broth, so pretend it's veggie broth. And certainly if you want that extra nice flavor, you can use chicken broth, and if you want it to be vegan, you can use veggie broth. So I've got 4 cups in this, right? A quart is 4 cups. I'm gonna pour the whole thing in, and then I'm gonna pour I'm just gonna fill the box up because that helps get all the flavor out of the box, and I'm gonna pour a whole box of water in. So it'll be 4 cups of broth, 4 cups of water. Now for spices, I want it to be somewhat mild because I really want my kids to eat it. It seemed like the internet thought that ginger was a good thing for carrot soup and cumin was a good thing for carrot soup. So I'm just gonna go with a tablespoon of each, and then next time I make it, I can adjust up or down, or even when I get home, I can taste it. We're gonna go to martial arts and then come back and eat this. So when I get back, I can taste it and decide. I am leaving my husband at home. He'll be working here, so I won't do the whole almost burn the house down thing again that I did. If you missed that video, I'll put it right there. All right, guys, get your uniforms on. All right, I'm literally going to do the cheater on carrots. These are cut and peeled baby carrots. Do you get as much flavor with baby carrots? No, you do not, because they're often not actually baby carrots. This is a trick. They say baby cut carrots. These are not baby carrots. These are great big overgrown GMO carrots, I'm sure, but whatever, it's what I have. And I dropped one on the floor. And it's better than not feeding my kids carrots. So there you go. Remember, we have to be simple and healthy. Simple and healthy mama, right? Now we'll add the spices. Okay, so I've got cumin seed and ginger. You could use ground cumin too, but since I measure like this, whatever. Okay, so I'm doing about a tablespoon of cumin seed. I'm pronouncing it fancy for you, cumin. I usually say cumin, is that right? And this has a shaker top, so we're just gonna shake some ginger in. Maybe a tablespoon of ginger? Who knows? Then we're gonna salt and pepper. Da, 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 da. And salt. I'm gonna go a little easy on the salt because that's really easy to add later. So these are nicely sauteing. I'm not cooking them until the veggies are all super soft because they're just gonna cook in the liquid. Oops, and I had a few extra carrots left in this lunch thing, so we're just gonna add those. Yeah, it's starting to smell really good. And now I'm going to add my chicken broth. I mean my veggie broth. This is faux veggie broth. We eat a plant-based diet in our house, which means we try and focus on whole foods and plant foods, but we do sometimes eat things like chicken broth. Okay, now I'm gonna fill this up with water to get all the good flavors out and pour that in as well. I hope this turns out, because if it's disgusting, I really can't post this video. So if I posted the video, then that means it was great. Okay, so there it is. We're just gonna cook it like that for about a half an hour. All right, so we actually dropped off one kid and we're popping home in between classes before the next kid has to be there because I did not have time to get the beer bread in the oven. And upon stirring this, I feel like it still looks really oniony. So I'm gonna go ahead and add another bag of carrots. So this is my 3rd pound of carrots. But it smells really good. And the internet said that this could cook in like 20 minutes and then you just use your immersion blender in it. I think it's probably gonna take a little longer because I put so much in. So I'm gonna cook that kind of on like a medium high while I make the whole wheat beer bread. All right, so now we're gonna whip up my favorite beer bread. It's just gonna be 3 cups of flour. I use stone ground whole wheat flour. I do measure this kind of. 1, 2, 3 cups. With baking, I know you're supposed to add things like baking soda and baking powder, so I'm adding a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of baking powder. Don't worry, this always turns out. So far we have 3 cups of flour, a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder. I like to do a little honey for sweetness, especially with the whole wheat flour, so I do maybe 3 tablespoons of honey. You don't have to do honey, you could do something else, maple syrup, agave, a little sugar would be all right. Then you're just gonna pour 1 light beer in, 1 cheap beer, not something fancy. You could do something fancy, but then you end up with a really rich bread and you'll want more sweetener. All right, so we bought Coors Light specifically for making beer bread. You just pour the whole can in, mix it up, dump it in a loaf pan like this, and put it in the oven for about 35 to 40 minutes. I set it to 375. All right, so you're gonna just mix this up. The batter will be lumpy. Now it's really good if you put a little melted butter, a little melted coconut oil on top. I'm in a hurry, so I'm gonna use already liquefied coconut oil. That helps the top stay moist. Now I'm just gonna blend this up with my immersion blender and make it into a pureed soup. And I finally Googled how you're supposed to use an immersion blender because I wasn't quite sure. And apparently the key is just making sure that you have the top of it fully submerged so that you don't spray yourself with hot soup. So I'm just gonna blend this until it's smooth and then it's ready to eat. Oops, I almost forgot one of the main ingredients. I often do that because I cook from my head and not from recipes or books. This is when I would have added it anyway, so it was fine. But at the very end, I tossed in a can of the light coconut milk. Oops, that's not how that was supposed to go. But I basically just dumped in a can of the light coconut milk, stirred it in, made sure everything was warmed up, and it was really yummy and creamy this way. Here's what the bread looked like. It turned out great. It always turns out great. That's why I showed you this recipe. And here's what our dinner spread ended up looking like. I always try and serve at least a couple things that my kids will for sure eat. So I also included the tangerines and snap peas. So I ended up actually making this soup again and waiting to post this video because I wanted to make sure that the soup was just as good if I made it with the veggie broth. So the second time that I made it, most recently, I went ahead and got this better than bouillon stuff where you just add a scoop of it. It's kind of like a paste, and then you add the appropriate water to reconstitute it into veggie broth. So it is veggie broth. You can use any type of veggie broth that you have, or the little cubes if you like them, but it worked fabulously and it was honestly just as good. I thought that the flavor would be better with the chicken broth, but it actually was better the second time, probably because it was just the second time that I made the recipe. And so it turned out better because I had a little practice, but it was fabulous with the veggie broth. So I would have no hesitation recommending this as a really delicious vegan soup. Or if you're not worried about being vegan, but you just want to be healthier, this is a good way to get a ton of servings of vegetables into your family. Our daughter, the second time that I made it, ate 2 full bowls of this. And our son, who didn't like it a lot the first time, actually ate a lot more of it the second time. So I think finding a balance of how much ginger you put in and really pureeing it smooth are things that can make it even more kid-friendly. I think adults often like a lot of ginger and kids maybe not so much. It can be the tiniest bit spicy. I hesitate to say spicy, but you know how kids call like ketchup spicy and you're like, that's not spicy. It's just flavor. I also tried doing ground cumin instead of the cumin seed. They both worked equally fine. I wouldn't say one was that different from the other. So either of those that you have on hand work great. I do want to say that the first time I made this, I did not add enough salt. So the second time I added a teaspoon of salt to the recipe and it was much better. So I think that at least a teaspoon of salt might be warranted, and you can always add a little salt at the table per people's taste. The second time I made this, I also had some vegan sour cream in my fridge, and I thought it might be really good with some of that on top. So I just did a dollop of that in each bowl. The kids especially loved that. I think it adds flavor, but it also just adds a nice element for presentation, which is not something I'm very good at thinking about, but it was a nice addition, totally optional. So I hadn't done a recipe in a while. I wanted to give you guys a really good idea of how you can make a super healthy meal for your family. You could do this with the beer bread or with something else. This can be a side dish. It can be the main dish. I feel like if I serve a really hearty bread with soup, then I can count it as dinner, but carrot soup on its own isn't super filling. So you might want to have something to go with it. If you liked this video, please like it below. Of course, the biggest compliment you can always give me is to share my content with other people who you think might enjoy it. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider doing that right down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Until next time, you've got this, mamas.